was sleeping in her bed. Her door was open so people could come in and help her, you know. She heard someone from her doorway say, "Deborah, Deborah."
Welcome to Eerie, Enigma, where the night attracts spooky clips from TikTok, where the mystery acts, chilling tales of haunting, shadows dance inside. Join us as we explore the paranormal fright. In the stillness of the night, whispers call your name.
Subscribe, like, and share.
Have you ever had a premonition? If so, you know that they can be very scary, but sometimes they just might save your life. And tonight's spooky story covers just that. So our story follows two women. We'll call them Kelly and Elizabeth. Now, the two women are college age. They love going out. They love getting into things. And on this particular evening, they're at home getting ready to go out for the night with two guys that they're into. So Elizabeth is really excited about all of this, and Kelly is too. And while Elizabeth and Kelly are getting ready, they have this routine of playing some music, doing a little drinking, and turning on the television. So Kelly goes into the living room while Elizabeth is in the bedroom, and she cuts the TV on, but the channel it pops onto is the news. Now, the news is talking about how there was some train wreck, and Kelly turns it up, but decides it's too morbid, so she turns to a different channel and then goes back in the room to get ready. So while she's in the bedroom finishing getting ready, she hears the phone ring. So she goes out into the living room to answer it. It's the two guys calling to tell them that they're on their way and they'll be there in about 5-10 minutes. So Kelly's really excited. She shouts into the room to Elizabeth to tell her to hurry up because Elizabeth has a long way to go. And as she's standing there in the kitchen, she notices the TV again. So she was kind of confused when she saw it was back on the news channel. And like earlier, the news channel is talking about a train wreck. Now Kelly is seeing this again, but she decides to watch it for a couple of minutes, and she sees that it was a black car, and instead of stopping at the train tracks like it should have, it decided to try to beat the train. And so this car was dragged amongst the tracks. It was a very violent accident. Now again, this is really killing the vibe, so Kelly decides to turn the TV off, and she goes back into the bedroom to finish getting ready. Now at this point, Kelly realizes she forgot something in the living room when she went to go answer the phone. And as she's walking back into the living room, she notices that the TV is on. But this time, instead of there being something playing on it, there's like a still picture as though the screen is frozen. So Kelly's looking at the TV, and the image that she sees on it is the same black car that was shown in the news clip earlier. It's just all over the tracks. It's wrecked. This car is obliterated. So Kelly is standing there staring at the screen. The image isn't moving, and she's getting this really uncomfortable feeling again. She just can't shake it. And she hasn't been able to shake it since they agreed to go out that evening with these guys. So Kelly, again, cuts the TV off, and she goes into the room to get ready with Elizabeth. Now, Elizabeth by this point is done, and the guys are like 2 minutes away. So they're sitting in the living room again, and Kelly and Elizabeth are talking, and all of a sudden there's a knock on the door. It's the two guys, their date. So Elizabeth is really happy to see them. They look so good. The girls look good too. But as they're sitting there in the living room, again with the TV off, Kelly is staring into the screen. So there's something about Kelly's demeanor that's changed since they finished getting ready. And Elizabeth has taken full notice of it. Now Kelly is still sitting there staring into the TV, and Elizabeth gently prods her and asks her if she's ready to go. And Kelly is like, "You guys have got to see this." Now, the two guys and Elizabeth are looking at Kelly, but there's nothing on the screen to look at. And so Elizabeth asking Kelly, "What is there to see? The TV's off, Kelly." And Kelly's like, I can't believe you guys aren't seeing this right now. Are you not seeing what I'm seeing? So Elizabeth is looking at the guys at this point because the guys are looking at Kelly like she is absolutely crazy. So Elizabeth, trying to be a good friend to Kelly, decides to humor her. So Kelly says, "We're going to die tonight if we go out." Now at this point, the guys are looking at both of them like they're crazy, and they're getting freaked out. But they're looking at her and they're like, "Well, if you guys aren't going to go, we're just going to head out because this is really creepy." Now, Elizabeth is trying to get Kelly to calm down because Kelly is frantic at this point. She's hyperventilating. She's trying to stop the guys from leaving, and she's telling them, "No, if we go out tonight, we are all going to die. We're going to die in a train wreck." Now, the guys are really scared at this point. Elizabeth's scared. And the guys are like, "You know what, Elizabeth, if you want to come with us, you're more than welcome to, but you need to leave your friend at the house." Now, Kelly is trying to beg her friend to stay, but Elizabeth is pissed off. She spent hours getting ready. She bought an expensive dress. She knows she looks good, and she's been wanting to go out on a date with these guys for a very long time now. So Kelly's kind of getting in the way of that. But Kelly convinces her friend to stay with her. Now, the guys are looking at Elizabeth, and they're waiting for an answer. They tell her that if they don't leave in the next minute or so, they're going to miss their reservations. And if she doesn't want to go with them, that's fine. They're going to leave so they can go out and have a good time that night. So Elizabeth, thinking they're a little bit dickish for that, decides she'll stay with her friend. Now, her friend is still trying to beg these two guys not to go, but they've had enough. So once the guys leave, it's just Elizabeth and Kelly in the house, and Elizabeth is pissed. She can't even look at Kelly. And Kelly is trying to cop a plea. She's letting her know what she saw on the TV. Elizabeth is just not trying to hear it. So she walks into her room, and Kelly is left out in the living room. A couple of minutes later, Elizabeth decides to come out and get some food, and Kelly is still sitting in the living room. She hasn't moved from the spot that she had been in since the guys came over. But this time, the TV is actually on. So when Elizabeth comes out, she looks over at Kelly and then at the TV, and that's when she sees the breaking news story. There's been a train wreck, 2 casualties, and on the tracks there's a black car. It was the same car that the guys had pulled up in earlier that evening, the same car that was supposed to take the 4 of them out to dinner, the same car that would have been heading in the direction that led over the train tracks. And so as Elizabeth is standing there, she's glued to the screen just like Kelly is, and this is when she looks at Kelly and Kelly looks at her, and Elizabeth breaks down, because Kelly had just saved her life. So, if you've ever had a premonition, go ahead and drop it in the comments. If you feel like sharing, you can tell me what it's about. But let me know what you guys are thinking. Do you think Kelly saw the imminent deaths of her and her friends that evening? Or do you think this was just some sheer coincidence? Anyways, drop your thoughts in the comments, and I will see you guys in my next video.
My aunt was sleeping in her bed. Her door was open so people could come in and help her, you know. She heard someone from her doorway say, "Deborah, Deborah." She just said, "Leave me alone," and went back to sleep. Her daughter, who was sleeping in the room across from her, she heard someone walking up the basement steps. She said that she thought it was my mother coming downstairs to check on my aunt. My mother had been in the room with me the whole time. That's step 2. 3. I was the last one up in the house at about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was watching a movie on the laptop. For context, right behind the couch there's a full wall mirror. I am now ending my movie and the laptop is starting to shut down. I'm realizing, it's very silent, it's very dark, it's too quiet, it feels weird. And I hear it's begin to walk into the living room. I heard heavy footsteps making the floor creak, and it was like, it seemed like it was like sneaking, like it was very slow steps. I literally hear the steps walk around to my side. It's literally right next to me. I'm still under the covers, mind you. And then it just stops. I'm woke, mind you. I never went to sleep. And the covers decompress on top of me. And on my ear, through the covers, I felt it hit my face and poof off of my face. I jumped up and threw the covers back so fast, I didn't care what I saw.
This photographer had one of the spookiest experiences in Louisiana. He says, "You ever seen something that shouldn't exist?" I am back with another spooky story. So in 2017, Michael, who's a photographer, was working on a documentary about abandoned places in Louisiana. So he'd been driving down this old highway on Baton Rouge when suddenly his GPS just started going crazy. The signal was flickering in between coordinates that just didn't make sense. And then his car just dies, just like that. And he had no service, no way to call for help, so Michael just started walking. And he says that's when he saw the town. Michael says it wasn't on any map and it definitely shouldn't have been there. He said he saw these small wooden houses. The windows were dark and empty, gas lamps that were flickering, even though there were no power line. Michael says that this whole place just felt wrong. Too quiet, like it was something waiting. Then Michael saw them. The people. He said that they were dressed in old-fashioned clothes, the kind that you'd see in history books. He says long dresses, suspenders, top hats, but their faces were blank. No expressions, just blank. He says these people's facial expressions is giving robotic. So Michael then turns to leave. However, the road that he had just taken was gone. It mysteriously disappeared. And this is when someone approached him and says, "You're not supposed to be here." And as he's looking around, he notices this big mansion. It was this mansion that was sitting at the edge of town that looked like it had been rotting for centuries. The windows were boarded up, but Michael says that he could just feel that there was something inside. And whatever it was watching. Michael says he walks closer to the mansion and that's when he saw it. He says in the second floor window was his reflection. Michael says his reflection, but not quite. It looked like him, but the eyes were black and his teeth were too sharp, and it was smiling. When suddenly Michael hears a voice saying, "He's waiting for you." I know you guys hate part 2s, but I'm gonna have to because I have to get to work. If you have a spooky story that you want me to tell, feel free to submit it to me on Instagram. Y'all was dragging me in the comments. What is it, Baton Rouge? Like, god damn, y'all are strict around here. Anyway, part 2. But when Michael turns around and he sees this mansion, the mansion that looked like it had been rotting for centuries, and Michael could feel that there was something inside of that mansion watching. And then he saw him in the second floor window, his reflection, but not quite. And from behind, Michael hears a voice saying, "He's waiting for you." So in that moment, Michael just took off running. He said he didn't care where, he just ran. However, every street that he turned into led him right back to the mansion. Michael says it really felt like the world changed. He says he looks up and the sky is like blood red. The houses look like they were decaying right in front of his eyes. And he's looking at these people and he notices that they're all laughing, except they did not have mouths. So at this point, Michael is thinking, okay, maybe he's tripping. Maybe this is a nightmare that he just cannot wake up from. And all of a sudden, he hears a noise, so he turns to look. It was the mansion door. The door had swung wide open. And Michael says he could not stop himself. Almost like he was in a trance, he walked inside the mansion. He said there was a hallway full of mirrors, and it seemed like each mirror had a different version of himself. He said the most terrifying stuff I've ever seen, seriously. Some had their mouths sewn shut, some had empty sockets where their eyes should be, and some looked just like him, but they had this weird sinister smile. And then he said one stepped out, and he looked like him, but he wasn't him. The man looks at him and says, "I've been waiting. You're the one who doesn't belong." Then he lunged towards Michael. Michael says he doesn't know how he fought back. He just remembers grabbing a sharp broken mirror in the tussle, and that part might be a little too graphic for TikTok. But he had a broken mirror in his hand, and you go figure what he did. And he says to his surprise, after he did it, the man didn't bleed. The man just cracked like glass. And as he gets up to run, he's hearing the sound of like this earthquake. And when he's looking back, it seems like that town was literally shattering. So he kept running, and he says, next thing I knew. Michael says next thing he knew, he was standing back on the side of the road, right where his car had broken down. Except only now, his car was working perfectly fine. Michael says he dashed up out of there and never looked back. And he says, but sometimes late at night, when he looks in the mirror, he sees him. That guy, still smiling as if he is waiting for him. Michael says it took him a long time to open up and talk about this because he still does not know what happened till this day. Though this happened in 2017 and it is now 2025, Michael says he doesn't even drive in that area. He just avoids it altogether. His friends wonder why he's become a weirdo because he covers every single mirror, terrified that he might just see that guy again. He says submitting the story was a way for him to remove some of that power. There is so much more to the world than we think.
Y'all want to hear about these ghost kids that just tried to pass themselves off as children when I had my kids outside for recess and just tried to have them line up and come inside the school? Okay, so I'm not a teacher. I'm a volunteer. I volunteer at my daughter's school. I pretty much help her teacher with whatever she needs. I'm just a concerned parent. So fast forward, the teacher counted out 14 kids for me to take outside for recess. I'm like, okay, cool. We get outside for the recess. I'm watching all 14 of the kids. I'm looking at them, watching them. Off to the right, there are the first graders, okay? And their teachers are over there watching them. And then on the jungle gym are the third graders. Now, mind you, like I said, we only had 14 kids that I took outside for recess. So I'm watching them, and where they're running, it's like nothing but open field, grass and trees. Now, it's not so many trees where you can't see the kids, right? They're only like, there's a big tree over here, there's a big tree off to the right, and then there's one single big tree that's straight ahead. Now, that one single big tree, I saw the kids over there running, and I was like, what they doing way down there? So I started yelling. I said, hey, get down here where I can, get to you, where I can see you. They weren't listening to me. So fast forward, I go down there. I start walking towards the tree. And then as I'm walking towards the tree that's in the far distance, the kids started running towards me. I guess they didn't want me coming down there. So I walked down there anyway just to make sure ain't no other kids hiding. So I walked down there and looked behind the tree. Nobody's down there. So I started walking back. And by that time, it was time for the kids to start lining up anyway. Recess was over. So I'm like, okay, let's line up. All the kids started lining up. And I'm like, you know what, let me count. So I started counting the kids. Now remember, I had 14 kids when I came out there. And all of a sudden, the number is at 19. I said 19. So I was like, I had 14 kids when I came out here. All of a sudden, we had 19. So then I started looking at faces. Because I've been with them 3 weeks now. Like, I've been volunteering for 3 weeks. I know what their face look like now. So I started looking at faces. And I see the last 5 kids do not look familiar to me at all. I'm like, what's your name? Little boy was like, Zachariah. I said, what's your last name? He could not tell me. I said, are you in Miss Wood's class? He said, no. I said, well, why are you on my line, baby? He's like, I just wanted to play. And then the other kids behind him just sitting there like statues, ain't said a word, didn't blink. And the other kids saw them as well. The other kids saw them. Y'all know how sensitive kids can be. And so I said, okay, baby, well, you're not in this line. Go ahead. I'm sorry, but you can't come in with us if you're not here. Find your teacher. They run off to that big tree out there in the far distance. And I, felt worried. Like I said, sometimes they look just as real as, you and I. They look just as real as me. Okay? So because they ran towards that tree again, I felt weird. And I ran down to the tree, and I told one of the teachers that's out there, like, hey, are these kids y'all's? And they weren't behind the tree. Disappeared. Weren't behind the tree. Remember what I said, there's nothing but open field and trees. They ran behind that tree, and I wasn't far behind them. They can't run that fast. Their little legs. They were at least 5 or 6. And when I say I was sprinting down there to get them, y'all, okay, I was sprinting down there. And cousin can run, okay? So get down there, and I start looking. I'm looking around. Nothing.
There are parts that even I'm just like, I don't know. But I will tell it to you the same way that it was told to me. And you guys can make your own judgments on how true you actually think it is. So, my uncle and his brother were on their way home from some business venture or whatever that they had in India. So they had gotten back into their flight, and they had hired a car and a driver to drive them back to their home village. And it was going to be like a 30-hour drive, it was like straight all the way through without any stopping, which is what they kind of had opted to do. So they get to the driver, they get to the car, and they start driving. And, like I said, their plan was to drive all the way through the night to get straight home. They weren't going to stop at all. So now they have been driving for several hours, probably around somewhere between 12 to 14 hours. And my uncle decides to ask the driver, if you're tired, why don't you go to the back? I'll drive for you. Is that cool? Right? The driver naturally says yes, because the man needs to sleep as well. So now it's my uncle, and he's behind the wheel. He's the one that's driving the car. And so far, so good. They passed through a small village. I don't know, couldn't have been more than, a couple hundred folks living there or something. Anyway, so they passed through a small village, and out in the distance, my uncle sees a lady in a white sari. Now, if you don't know, in Indian tradition, white means you're a widow or a widower, right? That's when you wear white. So at this point, my uncle has been driving for several hours. It's dead in the middle of the night. They're driving through a village, and out in the distance, he sees a woman in white, right? So he, like any gentleman, decides that he's going to stop and make sure she's okay and ask her if she needs any help, right? That's the whole thing. So he starts to slow down the car. And as he's approaching the woman to make sure that, he can, talk to her and everything like that. Out of nowhere, the driver jumps up, starts up out of a dead sleep, right? grabs my uncle by the shoulder and screams, "Don't stop, keep driving." Michael turns around like, what are you talking about? "Don't stop, keep driving." "Oh, okay, don't stop, keep driving." Okay. Uncle puts the car in gear and drives off. They pass the woman, and my uncle's brother says he caught a glimpse of her at the time, and according to him, it was the most beautiful woman he had ever laid eyes on, ever in his life. They pass the woman, and my uncle asks the driver in the back, "What the hell was that? What happened?" The driver then explains that there's a curse around these parts. There's a woman in white who stands out in the streets in the middle of the night, and she lures young men to her so that she can basically kill them, right? Some vengeful spirit. She was a widower when she was alive. Her spirit is at unrest, and that's how she copes in the spirit world, or something, I guess. As the driver is explaining these things, they look in their rear view mirror, and they see that the woman is chasing the car and gaining on them. So now everybody in the car is obviously freaking the hell out, right? So they press the accelerator, everything, right? And they're trying to get as fast as possible, as far away as possible. Nothing seems to be working. The woman is still coming at them, behind them. And now this is the part where I'm like, I don't know how true this is, but according to my uncles, this woman running behind them goes full horizontal and starts flying. I don't know how true that is, but this is the story. So now this woman is flying behind them, gaining on them, assumedly to get to them and unalive them, right? Then at some point, they look behind in the rearview mirror and they realize that the woman isn't there. So they're like, okay, cool, we're out of the woods. When all of a sudden, she pulls up onto the passenger side of the car. And my uncle's brother, sitting in the passenger side, looks, and he sees her head kind of turn, like she's looking forward, and he sees her head kind of like turn to look to the passenger side of the car, right? And he's like, in that turn, I saw her face change from the one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen in my life into just this awful, ghastly, like, creature, right? Like, eyes sunken, almost nothing there, cheeks all hollow, the mouth like agape and wide and dark. The skin turned pale and gray and crackly, and it was just awful. And when she turned to face them fully, she let out the most blood-curdling scream any of them had ever heard. And in the middle of this scream, they're driving, and all of a sudden she stops. She stops flying. She stands in midair, or like hovers in midair, where she was, and they're driving past. And the driver says, I think we just passed the boundary of the village, or the border of the village. So that is my uncle's experience with the lady in white. Yeah, I have a couple of more ghost stories like that, but that one's one of my favorites. Yeah.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
Okay, I'm going to try to do my best to talk about this quickly and also without getting too much of an adrenaline dump and shaking, because it's still to this day when I remember the story freaks me the hell out. I grew up in a very haunted house in Colorado. We found out it wasn't the house over time, it was the land. We actually did have a medium come and cleanse the house after my mom's first bout of cancer. Tons of stuff happened. I could literally tell story after story after story. We lived there for 30 years. It was bad enough that my dad actually did ask the realtor when he sold the house if he had to disclose to the new occupants that it was haunted. We found out over time, talking to other neighbors, they all had the same issues. It was the land this subdivision was built on. So the scariest thing. It was actually like a succession of things. But when we first moved in there, it was a 3-story walkout basement house built on a hillside. And I had the basement room as the oldest kid. And there was one night where I woke up, it sounded like people were banging on the doors. There was 2 entrances to my room. It sounded like they were running back and forth and trying to get in. I actually heard things in the playroom down there, like tumbling out of the cabinets and going all over the place. And when I finally worked up the courage, I turned on all the lights in my room, and one of the doors was a quick right and then left up the stairs to get up to the main level, turn around, and then go up again up to where my parents were sleeping. I was 12 or 13 at the time when this happened. I think it was about 13. So I hear all this happening. I suck up my strength to like go run. And as I start to open the door, somebody, wham, like hits the door, which made me fly back to my bed, pull up the covers. I didn't have a phone down there. Again, this is long before cell phones. So I had no phone, no way to call 911 or say somebody's broken into the house, nothing. So instead I took my boombox stereo and I turned the music up full volume. I was 2 floors below my parents' bedroom, and I thought, surely if I turn the music up all the way, they'll know something is wrong. It's about 3 in the morning. My dad did wake up, felt like something was wrong, came downstairs, saw that all my lights were on and that my music was blaring, and couldn't wake me up. The playroom, not destroyed. There was nobody down there. Nobody had broken in. Everything was sealed shut. He was so freaked out, he moved me immediately the next day up to my youngest brother's room, had him stay with my other brother while they moved my bedroom upstairs, because my dad was like, I only woke up thinking something was wrong. He didn't hear the music until he opened the basement door, and he was like, if somebody actually broke in, we wouldn't hear what was going on. So I told you that story to tell you this story. So they moved me up. It's maybe 2 nights later. I am sleeping on my brother's bed, looking down. He was at the end of the hallway from the top stairs on the 3rd floor. And it was a direct line of sight to my parents' bedroom. And I was so freaked out about what had happened. I was sleeping with the door open so I could see to their bedroom and feel like, I was kind of safe enough to get to them if I needed them. I woke up in the middle of the night to a slamming sound coming from the basement. And it sounded like doors were slamming somewhere in the house. Then I heard what sounded like running heavy footsteps up the basement stairs. It sounded like the basement door was kicked open and that someone had run around on the hardwood floors to the base of the other stairs and had run up those stairs and then stopped. Now, I was not staring down the hallway when I heard this. I was kind of like looking around, and then I looked at the base of the stairs, and I'm going to show you what I saw. Okay, so imagine that this is the top flight of the stair. So there's a whole wall coming this way and the railing for the stairs. I literally saw something like coming up this way with its hands, and it was like a black shape just looking at me down the hallway like this through the bars. I took in a big, deep breath, and I think I called for my mom, and this thing shot off like a light up the stairs. So it takes off up the stairs and like on all fours starts zooming this dark shadow thing towards my brother's door. And the door I could almost touch from the bed. So I just shot out of bed and slammed the door shut. And I screamed bloody murder. I woke up the whole house. Nothing hit the door. Nothing else happened. But of course my dad took off out of bed and ran towards my brother's room. It's like, what the hell is going on? None of the doors were open. The basement door was locked. No one had broken in. And I, after that point, until we got me moved into my other room, slept with that door shut. There are so many things that happened in that house. Like I, for a long time, could not sleep with a mirror in the same room as me because of things I saw. There was an entity that several people saw that my family didn't talk about for a very long time until we once we had the medium in, people kind of figured out something weird was going on with our house. But I have tons of stories. And I actually, if that story sounds familiar, I shared it on last podcast on the left several years ago. And I remember seeing a bunch of comments of people saying like, there's no way that's true. People lie about this stuff all the time. I am telling you, on my life, my child's life, my family's lives, this shit happened, and it happened so often. Like, my mom would leave the house and call somebody from the front porch and say, I'm scared to be here alone. Everybody had something happen. Everybody. Like, it just was, it was a very active house. I could tell stories for hours.